talk to you about the psychology of recruiting. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Quina Feldstein.
All right. If my voice cracks, I promise it's because I'm freezing, and it's not because I'm nervous. So some of you guys are phenomenal recruiters, and some of you are amazing at recruiting, but do those skills transfer to your staff? So it's one thing to be a great recruiter, but it's another thing to be great at teaching recruiting. So for those of you who get 50% shows or higher, my goal is to teach you how to get your people to 50% shows or higher. Those of you that aren't there yet, you're not consistently at 50% shows, my goal is that my talk here helps you get to that level. So my objective of this message is that everyone in this room gets an increase to show to training of 5%. I just want to show you what the impact of 5% can do for your business. Let's say you have 400 set for training for the year or for the summer, and 40% show to day one, that's 112 launched, or that's $224,000 in CPO. But let me show you what 5% could do for your business. If you could increase your show to training just 5%, with a 45% show to training, that's 126 launched, that's $252,000 in CPO. That's a $28,000 difference. What would your office sales be at this year with $28,000 more in CPO? So it's not harder to get better shows of training. It's actually easier to get better shows of training because if you know you have the skill set, to get better shows, interviews are more fun, they're more rewarding, they're more exciting, and it becomes less draining and more fulfilling. So it takes just as much time to run a bad interview, so you might as well run a good interview. So I have 5 sections to my message today. The first section is the psychology of your office walls and decor. So I want to challenge you to stop looking at your office through the lens of a district manager. I want to challenge you to look at your office through the lens of a high school senior or college student who knows nothing about our business. So what does your office look like through the eyes of a recruit? Does it look sketchy? Does it look unprofessional? Sharp recruits, your sharpest recruits are from private high schools, which means they're used to walking through dad's law office every day. So what does your office look like when they first walk in? Do you have proof of success, credibility? Are you framing your posters? No more push pins. We aren't branch managers anymore. Spend the money. Watch your quality of recruits improve because of the investment you make. People judge a company by the people that work there. So what photos do you have on the walls, or better yet, on a slideshow? This is the recruiting room in my office. Do you have posters framed? Key staff is framed with every person that's qualified for key staff underneath of their stats, what high school they graduated from. That's proof that other people work here, that they know the people that work here. I like to schedule phone jams or small office events during interviews, music pop and reps in the office. Do they sense it's a fun environment? Is there proof of success on the whiteboard? On our whiteboard, we have the top 10 campaign to date listed, every rep's name and sales for the campaign. So when they're sitting waiting for their main interview to start, they see proof that other people work here, and they see and recognize a lot of their friends. Underneath that, I have the top 5 listed for the week in sales, and oftentimes it's their friends that PR'd them, so they can see from the previous training class how successful their friends were. On the right-hand side, we have all the assistant managers listed along with their sales. We also have the key staff listed. We have the sales for the year and our office goals. We also have framed the DSA letter in the Wall Street Journal. We've also framed the Chapman University letter. I have every campaign to date, top 25 framed as well from every campaign. Now I'm just starting to do summers, but of every campaign. So when they're waiting for their main interview and they look behind them, they can see proof of success, and they can see also their friends that they recognize names of and their success as well. What does your pre and post room look like? Is there credibility in you as a manager, as a leader? And a little feng shui is always good too. So how do you show your office culture through your office setup? Your walls are a direct reflection of your culture, and there's a lot of psychology behind that. All right, the next section, I want to talk about your mentality before your interview. So how do you mentally prepare before you run an interview? If your accept percentage on Vector Live is lower than 90%, it's oftentimes because you're going through the motions. As veteran district managers, it's not difficult to run an interview anymore. We can do it in our sleep. The challenging part of running interviews now is being engaged and staying present in the interview. So controlling your body language will help you be more engaged. I'm a big TED Talk person, and one of the most inspiring TED Talks that really helped bring my show to training up to another level is from Amy Cuddy's message on body language. So Amy Cuddy is a social psychologist. She's a professor and researcher at Harvard Business School. Amy Cuddy's research on body language reveals that we can change other people's perceptions and even our own body chemistry simply by changing our body position. So what she did, she conducted a study. She randomly selected 42 men and women, and she randomly assigned two groups into two positions of power. She asked one group to sit for 2 minutes in a low power posture, and she asked another group to sit for 2 minutes in a high body posture. And what she found is standing in a posture of confidence, even when we don't feel confident, can affect testosterone and cortisol levels in the brain and might even have an impact on our chances for success. So results showed after cheek swabs of the group in low body postures versus high body postures, they found that the group in the high power body position actually increased their testosterone by 20%. And decrease cortisol. So cortisol is the stress hormone. So stress lowered, testosterone increased by 20%. They also reported an increase of feelings of power, and they also had a higher risk behavior. So they actually tested them through gambling. So before I came up, if you guys saw me, I was walking around like this. I was doing my high body posture, so I wanted to increase my testosterone. If you were sitting behind me, I was probably distracting you because I was doing this. It's another high body posture. So hands on hip, I call it the power stance. So what's this mean? It means preparing your body language before an interview can actually change and alter the brain chemistry for success. So I have all my assistant managers, all my new recruiters, it was absolutely mandatory before they ran an interview to sit, face the wall, and power stance. And they just did that for 2 minutes before every interview. And I think that's why we got 50% chose of training. They just power stance before their interview, got them in a success mindset. Animals do it in the wild. Why does the power stance work? This achiever stance, because it makes us appear larger than we are. So it makes us feel more in control, more assertive, and ready for action. So you'll see, birds puff out their feathers. You'll see fish sucking in water. So animals do it in the wild because it makes them feel ready and assertive for action, and it communicates power. So before your interviews, as veteran district managers, get in the right mindset. Spend 2 minutes and have that expansive nonverbal display and watch your shows of training increase. The next thing I want to talk about is your stage presence and body language. I'm going to be teaching you right out of one of my favorite books, and it's called The Definitive Book of Body Language. When I was Ryan Casey's pilot manager in 2010, he had me read this book to help me improve my communication skills, and it totally paid off. When I finished the book, my shows to training went from 52% in one summer to 70% as a new district manager. In this book, it mentions Dr. Albert Mehrabian, author of Silent Messages. He states that 7% of any message is conveyed through words, 38% is through vocal elements, and 55% through nonverbal communication like body language. So what does that mean? It means we recruit applicants mostly through our body language, our presence, and our ability to read their body language as well. So knowing how to read people is going to help you connect more in connect with your applicants more during your pre-screening. It's going to help you figure out which fear bubbles to pop and to who during your main interview. And it's also going to give you more insight on what to say in your post. So start practicing your skills. I encourage everyone to start watching movies that you've never seen before with no volume. Start analyzing when you go to parties. It's always fun to watch in social situations how people's body language. You can always tell who's interested in who's hooking up with this person. Go to parties and start watching. I'm sure many of you had, or maybe you are, that friend, that one guy, and that one guy gets in fights like everywhere he goes. Every club, right, every bar, every party, there's always a fight being picked with this guy, and it's never his fault. Maybe some of you were this guy in high school. I can guarantee it's the way he stands. I can guarantee it's the body language. So be aware of your body language. Being a good recruiter starts with awareness. Being aware of your body language, your nonverbal cues can help you increase your shows that extra 5%. You are being evaluated by your applicants more than you realize. So don't be that manager in your interview. As veterans, we've ran so many interviews, and we are so good at judging people when they walk in. Our pre's and posts might look like this: slouching, uninterested, overall bad body language. So be aware of how you may be appearing to your applicants when also things aren't going right. For example, when you run out of pens in the middle of the summer, or your applications are out and you need to make copies last minute, or someone shows up 35 minutes late. So I tell all my new managers to be a duck on water. And you've probably heard this before. As veteran managers, we've heard this philosophy: be a duck on water. The analogy is, from the surface, the duck looks like it's effortlessly, gliding through the pond. But when you dive underneath and you look up, you can see the duck is fiercely paddling to stay afloat. So what I mean by that is whatever happens is supposed to happen. Like, oh, we ran out of pens, no problem. Here's a highlighter, here's a crayon. Go and have a seat there on the floor. I'll get you a chair in just a few minutes, thank you. And then you turn the corner and you're running like crazy finding whatever markers, pens, crayons you can find. Right? So be the duck on water. Everything that's happening right now is supposed to happen. So another aspect of presence in the interview comes from mirroring. Mirroring in the pre and the post. Mirroring makes someone feel accepted. It creates a bond of equality. It's the most powerful way to create instant rapport with someone. And the reason that is because psychologically, the more in tune emotionally and intellectually two people are, the more they mirror each other's movements subconsciously. I find that so fascinating. When you can tell in a good marriage by their body language. They're typically mirroring one another without even noticing it. I also was taking a look at old photos. My dad and I are very close, and I was looking at old family photos. And almost every family photo, even if my dad and I are on opposite sides, we're like the exact same body posture. And it's because he and I are just connecting, and we mirror each other subconsciously. If you're good at mirroring, if you can master this art form, people are going to describe you as easy to talk to. People are going to describe you as really cool and really comfortable to be around without even knowing why they're describing you that way. So when it comes to mirroring, you also want to be aware of your smiling during your interview. Your smiling should mirror your applicant. However, if you're smiling more than your applicant, they're going to perceive you as easy to please. They're going to perceive you as submissive and less credible. According to this book, to increase credibility, especially with men, women should actually smile less in business. Little fun fact. You also never want to mirror anyone's negative body language either, nor do you want to do it too soon. It comes off as fake. Another aspect of mirroring is how fast or slow you should be speaking. Never ever speak faster than your applicant. Studies show that people feel pressured when someone speaks more quickly than they do. Also, you want to be aware of your as your handshake. Weak handshakes communicates a lack of authority. And I've shaken a couple hands this trip, so you want to be aware of your handshake. Also, too strong a handshakes communicates over-aggression. Something also fascinating to learn is the direction of your palm can dictate how people perceive you. So if you've ever noticed when someone shakes their hand palm down, you don't like them. As females in here, if you've ever ran an interview and a big guy walks in, he's like, "How you doing?" He puts palm down. Automatically, we're like, "I don't like this guy," and you screen him without even knowing why you don't like him, because when the palm down, it's very it's very alpha, it's very dominant. And so also with palm up, it's submission and it's honesty, which is fine, but not in business. When you're running an interview, if you're hey, how's it going, palm up, right, that also comes off as weak. So the best way as an interviewer is, palm to palm, straight up and down. And there's some people I shook hands with, in the last couple of days. So we want to be aware of how we're shaking hands with our applicants. So for your body language, I encourage you to film yourself. And that's what I've been doing the last few years as a manager, is I had my sales manager film me, so that way they can watch later and get their stats to improve, but mostly so I can watch myself and see how I'm recruiting through my body language. So film yourself, but watch it without sound. And just sit there and just watch your body language and see how it's coming off. Oftentimes as managers, we do a lot of this stuff, which means we're pointing at our keynote or our PowerPoint, and what's happening is our chest is away from our audience, and there's no open communication in that. So be aware of yourself by watching the films over. Also have others watch you. Be present. Take mental notes. For example, how do your people see you holding your script when you're teaching them how to run interviews? I believe in holding a script every time you run an interview. Although many of you are like, well, I have the interview script memorized, I don't need to have it out. Well, you sound like a new rep saying, well, I have the manual memorized, I don't really need to bring it out either. When you have your manual or your script out, you look more credible to your applicants. I also am a strong believer in holding your script because then it also allows for less fidgeting. When we have something in our hands, it allows us to fidget less. As females, we have a tendency to flip our hair a lot or touch our jewelry, which is very distracting, and it's a very feminine gesture. So your male applicants may not be coming in for the right reasons. And also as males, we have a tendency when we're nervous to put our hands in our pockets. And when you put both hands in your pockets and you frame the groin, that's also a distracting gesture. It's a very male-dominant gesture, and a lot of female recruits are going to be turned off by you. So if you hold your script while you're running your interviews, it's less distracting and allows for less, nervous tics. I believe in holding your script in just two ways, here or here. Because if you're holding it like this and you're doing a lot of gestures, it becomes distracting. So holding it kind of down towards your hip. Also, how do your managers see you when you're running interviews as far as eye contact with your applicants? When was the last time you watched one of your assistant managers run an interview? I can guarantee they're running interviews like this, with sprinkler eye contact. They're just talking like this, back and forth, making eye contact like so. They're not going to recruit everyone in that interview. Teach your assistant managers how to make eye contact with the person that you're kind of talking about in your main. If you're talking about, with entry level, we work with a lot of students, of course you're going to make eye contact with the student in the group. Do your AM see you pacing? Or are your feet cemented to the ground? You want to be somewhere in between, fluid. Do they see you sitting during your main interviews, or standing? Standing is important even in small interviews. It communicates professionalism and presence. As a female, I believe in always standing, because naturally we're small, and especially for me, I have to stand and I always wear high heels. I have to stand in every interview, because if I'm sitting, I'm below my applicants in eye level. So standing during your interview is more presence. You also want to be aware of your applicant's body language, and I'm such a strong believer in this book. If you read this book, you're going to be able to read people like a book. It's awesome. So when you become good at reading nonverbal communication, you're going to be able to see who's going to show to training and who won't. You'll be able to see whose interest you lost in the main interview and why. You'll also know who's going to decline the job before you even offer them the position. So watch for poor body language. For example, you'll see a lot of low power poses while you're running an interview. These power poses express they feel inferior to you. They're nervous. They lack confidence that they can do this job. So you got to change your approach. The moment you see low power poses, you have to change your approach and build their confidence. Also watch for arms crossed. This is the greatest sign that you're not going to get this group to show to training. So a great way to stay engaged as veteran district managers during an interview is kind of look at running an interview like a video game. You know, look at every fear bubble you pop gets you a point because their arms uncross. You know, my favorite interviews is when I'm about to start the main and everyone's crossed their arms like this. You know, and I'm about to start my main interview, I'm like, this is going to be fun. I wonder how many points I can score right now. So if there's 5 people in my interview and all their arms are crossed, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Because every time they uncross their arms in my head, I have that little sound. I'm like, yep, I got 10 points. So it's fun when you know how to read people, because then you stay more engaged and you're more present. You know, how long can you keep them at the edge of their seat? You get extra points for that. You know, when someone crosses their arms back up, you lost points. How can you gain them back? So in this book, I read that they did a study on 2 groups of students. And one group of students were instructed to tightly cross their arms and legs during the lecture, while the other group of students were instructed to relax their arms, open palm, and open body language in order to receive the message. And what they found was the group that tightly crossed their arms over their chest retained 38% less than the group with uncrossed arms. They also found that the group that crossed their arms were more critical of the lecturer, and they were also more distracted during the class. So what does that tell you? If you have applicants in your interview that their arms are crossed, they're not hearing most of the information you're saying. That's probably why they don't show to training, because they didn't hear everything. You got to get them to uncross their arms, get them engaged, you know, change their emotions. So how do you do that? Say their name. That's a good way. Another way is get them involved. I always ask the sharp kid with their arms crossed to help me cut rope. I always ask the other sharp kid with their arms crossed to help me cut leather. You know, I ask them a positive question, get them more active. I also ask them to take notes. That's big. If you don't make that a strong direction in your interview, you're missing a huge opportunity to recruit at a higher level. You know, asking them to take notes and planting the seed in the pre that they'll be taking a lot of notes. So that way it keeps their body language more open. Because of this study, they are actually changing many universities. They're actually trying to put armrests in the seats. Therefore, people are less likely to cross their arms because we feel more comfortable this way. But if it shows 38% of information is retained less, then they're investing into putting armrests now into universities so that way they could retain the information. Also, when an applicant does this, anyone seen this before? This is typically a male gesture. It's used to intimidate others, to fake relaxation, and then they'll attack, right? So it's a very arrogant. We as managers, we assume that this applicant is arrogant, and we screen them in a hot second, right? We don't like them because they come off as I have all the answers. Maybe one day you'll be as smart as me. We screen these applicants because we feel like they're neg or they're disrespectful. But what I found, you want to watch out for younger recruits. Some of my best recruits were the ones that did this in the pre. Why would a young recruit do this in the pre-interview? They're super nervous. They're so nervous and they're so intimidated that they're just trying to fake confidence right now. And they're trying to feel better in this moment because this is the equivalent to the high achiever stance, but seated. So they're trying to feel more comfortable in the moment, and they're trying to fake confidence. I had this guy named Buddy Mitchell came into my pre-screening, and he did this exact thing. And I'm like, this kid is so arrogant. But I was like, whatever. I remember what I read. He's just really nervous. He's faking, confidence. 21K fast starter. So be aware that sometimes these things may come off as negative, but they're actually just really nervous. The insecure cool guy. The arms crossed, thumbs up. So this is, you'll see this a ton in training seminars. It was funny, I was teaching this in our leadership academy, and I called my kid, I'm like, yeah, Manny, you do that all the time, and he's like, oh shoot, because this is the cool guy, like he's feeling defensive, they feel superior though, but they feel defensive at the same time. Again, you gotta get them to uncross their arms. You'll also see this in interviews. This is the lint picker. They're looking down and away from others, and they're picking off the imaginary lint from their shirt. What this communicates is they don't approve with what you just said, and they prefer not to say it or admit it to you, but they're disapproving of something that you're saying. So you want to look for good body language. That's how you know you recruited them. Again, the better you get at learning how to read people through their body language, the more you're going to be able to predict who's showing to training before you even pre or post them. It's giving you more preventative control in a sense. So look for a lot of head nodding during your interview. Head nodding signifies that they agree with your point of view, and I've noticed everyone's been head nodding the entire time I've been speaking. So look for the head nodding. It's also a universal sign of submission. Research shows that people born deaf, dumb, or blind use this gesture to signify yes. So this is innate. The speed of nodding is also something you want to pay attention to. The speed of nodding communicates whether they are patient with what you're saying or impatient with your point. If they're nodding really quickly like this, that means move on, stop talking about it. They already understand what you're saying. So if they nod slowly, then that means it communicates that they're interested in what you have to say. Look for the head tilt too. You'll see that in the PowerPoint here. The head tilt is a submission signal because it exposes the throat and neck. It appears to be less threatening. So when you run an interview, watch for your group tilting their heads because it means they're learning and they're agreeing with what you're saying. Lastly, I want to touch a little bit on delivering an unforgettable stunt speech is all psychology. What do people want out of a job? From the book The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy, he says the 5 things millennials want out of a job in order of importance is this. Number 5 is money. Number 4 is growth. Number 3 is opportunity. The number 2 thing that they're looking for is a challenge. The number 1 most important thing is the people. So your stump speech can encompass all 5 of these things, but you want to emphasize a lot more on the opportunity, the challenge, the competition, and of course the people. So I read an article that said influence is about 80% emotion, 20% logic. So the more skilled you are at helping people get emotional about your business, about your vision, about your team, the more often you're going to hear people say yes to joining your team. So tie your applicants into the team and making them feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves. There are 5 steps to writing an unforgettable stump speech that you'll find in the SLC folder. But you want to deliver your stump speech with more enthusiasm, confidence, big, you're in charge.